All right, we are here, episode 28 with Mike Levin. Mike, welcome to the Trilogy Lacrosse Theater.
I'm very honored to be here.
Does anybody still call you Levs, or is that just
It's weird. It's like I have my whole professional life now, like people who know me from working with me, but they there isn't a lot of carryover of playing lacrosse nicknames. So
like
this can revive it.
I almost emailed, you emailed me, and I almost wrote back Levs, and I was like, this is like a professional setting, even though it's just two of us. I'm just gonna stick with Mike here.
That happens to me all the time. I'm just like, what's the appropriate thing here? But
well, it's funny because you work in lacrosse too, so it's like you would think there'd be more carryover, but I guess it's
yeah. I think I just try to pretend that I'm more professional than I actually am. So I'm like,
well, you got the beard going, you got the longer hair, so you can blame that on COVID or being in Santa Monica, either one, right?
Something, yeah. Kids are good for blaming stuff on. You're like, I couldn't make it. My kids,
Where you're in Santa Monica right now?
Yep, I live in Santa Monica, so in my garage, where I've been holed up, hanging out in my garage a lot for these last few months.
It's a good-looking garage.
Yeah, it's nice. I'd say garage. It's it's nicer than a garage, but no, the car no longer lives in here. But we're making the most of it.
So that's your de facto office, is the garage turned into. Yeah, that's that looks like a full-on office. Well, Mike, we're excited to get you on here. I dug through the archives to find some good video. Guys like yourself that played in some of the earlier days of the MLL. There's less highlight clips and more full games available. So got to watch some fun ones that we'll dive into. But before we do that, I think you had a legendary career at Brown, and you came from Rochester, New York. And how did you end up at Brown? What got you there? And then looking kind of at your time at Brown, we'll go through some of those things.
Yeah, so it was definitely a different era of recruiting back then. Ryan and I are the same year. I feel like you guys are probably more familiar with the changes, but it kind of felt like we were sort of like the last class before things really started to shift. I remember there were a couple of early commitments. Ryan was probably one of them, but not like it is now, And so I just kind of played high school lacrosse and figured that if I was good enough, somebody would see me and try to do well in school. And there's there's a few schools recruiting goal. When you kind of do the Venn diagram, you're like, okay, I want an academically selective school, and I think I qualify, and I play goalie, and I'm in this class. It's basically turned into there were about 6 or 7 schools recruiting the same kids, So I was kind of it's funny because at the time I had my heart set on going to Dartmouth for some reason. And I was at Top 205 and I went up to Lars, who's an assistant there, who, now the coach at UVA, who I'm sure anyone watching this will know, and who's also became the coach at Brown. I never played for him, but he went there, and he was like, so I'm really interested in Dartmouth. And he's like, yeah, I've seen you play. You're all right. He's like, what are your grades? And I told him, he's like, what are your SATs? He goes, yeah, you're not going to get into Dartmouth. We're not going to help you. So that was the first at Top 205 camp, the college night. I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? So then I was kind of walking around. One of the Brown assistants came up to me and was like, hey, I want to talk to you. And he was from Rochester. And he had I was on his radar or whatever. And I ended up looking kind of came down to Brown and Georgetown. But I was looking for an academically selective school. And I think looking back on it, I kind of stumbled into a great college experience. Brown's a pretty unique place to go to college, I think. And I was mostly just looking for a really good school. And I also wanted to play lacrosse, but I got a lot out of going to a college like Brown.
And who were some that you mentioned? Because it is funny, we've talked to a couple goalies on this, but the recruiting pool gets so much smaller when you narrow down to a goalie, even more so than a face-off guy, which now is different than it was when we were getting recruited. I don't think that was probably recruited specifically for face-off.
Right.
Who were the other goalies in your class that you were seeing on recruiting visits or you knew talking to?
Well, Tillman Johnson was he was one of the first early guys. So he was kind of basically already committed, but he was well established as pretty much the best guy in the class. And then there was a guy, I'm having even a hard time remembering. I'm trying to think of when we became seniors, who were the goalies then. But there was a guy, I remember I was on a visit to Georgetown with, I think his name was Brian McAleer. He was from Long Island. Um, there was a guy who went to Notre Dame our year, but I don't think it was one of the Kemps, but it could have been. Might have been like just before the, what's
Kyle
that?
Miller, was Kyle Miller. He was
Yeah,
here.
Kyle Miller was my
On
year.
the radar at that point though, since he was Canadian. But
Yeah, it was like pre like the floodgates open from Canada. Like you were truly under the radar if you were a recruit from Canada. So there was somebody else that I'm forgetting that I kept stumbling into. I don't think a lot of them ended up like playing for all 4 years or anything. I think it probably wasn't that deep of a goalie class in retrospect. But I'd have to go back to look at like Empire State games. That would probably be like the best proxy. But I can't even remember who were the other goalies.
It's so funny you said that about Brown, because like the first like couple years of Trilogy, like kids would be like, I'm really interested in like an academic school, but a school where I could like, play lacrosse competitively. And then like we would kind of knew the kids socially a little bit, and we'd be like, you should check out Brown. Like, and like I didn't even know anything. I like didn't even know anything. I just like knew like these like superficial and kind of auxiliary things. It was like me and this guy Matt Trevena, we'd always be like, we both went to Princeton. We'd be like, you should check out Brown. I think like that would be like a good fit. And like we do any specifics or particulars.
It's like, that's the vibe I'm getting from you. I'm getting a very Brown vibe from you. So that is how people at Brown would think though. So it kind of works out. It's like,
and what was it that sealed the deal that you're like, all right, Brown is the spot for me, other than them being like, hey, we need a goalie here. We'll take it.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because Coach Pete Lazzani was the coach, and he came to my house, which was like a really funny recruiting visit story. Like, he's like, our family's going on vacation to the Adirondacks, we'll swing by. And he comes to my house, and he has like his 2 kids and his dog and his wife, who also went to Brown. And they like, his dog comes running out of the car. They're like this old beat up Subaru station wagon. And the dog's like running, tearing up my house. And I was just like, this is not like every other lacrosse coach. Like and I was into it, And then like we spent like his wife. I remember when we were eating, she she offered this whole different perspective on like what it was like to go to Brown and not play lacrosse. That was like I wasn't really getting that in any of my other recruiting experiences, and I was just like, I loved them both. I loved the whole experience, and I had other great experiences with coaches, but I was just kind of like, wow, this is like a little bit different. As it turns out, he left right before I got there, so I never got to play for him. But and I think on my visit, I was like, I just found that it kind of similarly, it was like not your average lacrosse playing scene, like I found a lot of interesting, smart people who were like different, and I had a great experience at Georgetown. I stayed with Kyle Sweetie, and I was like,
well, there you go. That's why you didn't go there. Right there. Another loyal guest. Just let's throw him under the bus.
And Coach U was amazing, but it was just like, I was like, these guys it was obvious that they were very good and they were going to be very good. But there was something about Brown that I really appreciated.
Well, we always talk about, with our kids when we're helping with the recruiting process, like, would you be happy there if you didn't play lacrosse? So it's so interesting that you say you got that perspective from an outsider, a lacrosse outsider. That's a kind of unique, bring along someone who went to the school but didn't play lacrosse there and make them the secondary sales pitch. I like that concept by Coach Anya.
It's almost like, was it like a little like pre-planned? Like I don't think it seems like it wasn't, but like if they're like,
dog,
okay, we're gonna
take the dog guy. We'll bring the dog.
I don't knowing Coach Lasagna.
Hey, honey, you're gonna come to dinner too, and then like casually.
She didn't go around. She didn't go around.
Yeah, that'd be good. It's like really make it a full family experience. I think there needs to be more like team coordination in recruiting. It's like you see in football when like, the guy, I remember seeing a couple of years ago when Kevin Sumlin at A&M like shows up at the high school game with a helicopter. It's like, this is a lacrosse version of that. You just get like your buddy to come along.
It's the Subaru version.
We don't quite have the helicopter showing up at your game yet, but we got the Subaru and our family dog. So.
And so who started your freshman year? Because was it your sophomore year?
I started my sophomore year, yeah. My freshman year was a guy named Barrett Dixon, who's an amazing
goalie. God. Oh, yeah. Barrett
Dixon. He won the Kelly Award in Maryland, and he was like just an awesome, awesome person to be a freshman when he's a senior, because he was like clear incumbent. There was never any like sort of like no, I never felt like I should be the starter, and I hope he never felt that way either. He was the hardest working guy on the team. He would constantly pull me aside and be like, "We're going to do like a goalie workout," and I really looked up to him. So it was like a great situation for me to walk into, and he was an unbelievable player.
And so,
he was the top recruit of his class. From a goalie perspective. I mean, at least that was like my perception of him and his session. Calvert Hall.
Calvert Hall, okay.
Yeah.
Calvert Hall.
Yeah, that's kind of the best opportunity, right? Take a year to learn and then be ready to fly right away. And who were you competing with that sophomore year for that starting spot, or was it pretty much a shoe-in?
No, there was another guy named Alex Schultes who was ahead of me. He was from, I think, Episcopal Academy in Virginia. He was a year ahead of me. And he had like played in the German national team one summer. So he had like good international experience, and he was a good goalie too. And then a guy came in behind me, Nick Genilesco, who was a year behind me. He ended up taking a year off and got like an extra year to play. So I had like the inside track, or at least I thought I did as a freshman, and as it turned out I did. But like, we had some other good goalies on the roster for sure. Browns had a long history of good goalies.
Yeah. Does it go back before Catrano? I guess Sal, right? Is Sal the godfather there?
There's the guy named Jay Stelfer. It was before Catrano. It was really good. He was an All-American. And then, I mean, there's definitely some other ones. I remember.
Sal's a UMass guy. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Sal's a UMass. Sorry. What? I probably just offended like
this
a
guy
lot of
Jay
people.
I don't know that much about this. I was like, I don't remember Sal Casio, man.
No, I'm sorry.
I've been
edit that out. We got to edit that out.
With no sports on TV, I've been watching some like old school lacrosse games on YouTube. There's just some great. I'm big like early '90s, mid '90s lacrosse. But the great game was the '98 World Championship at Hopkins, and Sal Casio played amazing in that game.
Yeah, that was Doc was talking about that being one of the best. One of our goalies that we were talking to was saying that was like one of their favorite. Maybe it was Bill Day. Bill Day might have talked about that game.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, Doc, I was watching it the other day. Doc was the backup goalie for Lacasio in that game.
Yeah, that's right. And front row seat right there.
Yeah.
And then for your expectations versus what happened. Obviously, you were a 3-time All-Ivy. You were an All-American, 2-time captain. Like, going into it, were you like, we're going to win national championship, we're going to get to the Final Four? Were you like, we're going to win the Ivy League? What was kind of your expectations? And then the results were, you guys had good seasons over the course of your 4 years, but you were clearly the kind of the backbone of that team.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was thinking about it before this call because my last college game was against Ryan, and I'll never forget. We lost a game a few weeks prior to that to Penn, and I was kind of like, I think we're not going to be able to make the tournament. We never made the tournament when I was there, and I was devastated. I was just like, I was very all in college, and I was like, I put so much into this, and we didn't achieve what I wanted to achieve. Then, as it turns out, we had a big win against Cornell, and so like going into that last game, we had kind of an outside shot. Like I think if we made it, we would have been kind of like a bubble team, but we had a good shot. And we lost. Princeton had a great team, and so I would say like at the time I was devastated. Like I felt like we didn't get where I wanted us to go, and I didn't achieve what I wanted to as a player or as a leader. But like with a little reflection, I look back on it and I'm like, I had a great experience. Like it's at the time I remember thinking we were like always underachieving. And I think that we could have done better for sure. But then playing MLL, I was like, oh, like we didn't really have that many guys like this. Like when I was playing on Rochester, we had all these like animals on the team. I'm like, yeah, I thought we were underachieving, but like actually we didn't really have that many players like this. So maybe we were achieving like pretty much where we should have been. Like we didn't have like Brody Merrill's hunting people down all over the field. We had good players, but not like that. And like those are the teams that went to the tournament. So. Look, you have a little maturity, you look back, like I had a great experience and I wish we would have done a little better as a team, but I don't think I could ask for a lot more out of my college lacrosse experience.
And did you, as you're going through the process, did you have a clear vision of what you wanted to do after college, or?
No, I had no idea. After we lost that game, I was just like, I really felt like I had like unfinished career. I just like, I want to keep playing lacrosse. Like I kind of like so much of my identity was wrapped into it. I was like, I got to keep doing this. And my mom was a teacher, so I kind of like that was on my radar. I'm like, I think I might want to go become a teacher. I was like, I like lacrosse. I'll probably like coaching, but I wasn't. I just like after graduation, I went to the MLL draft. Like I took my car, drove from Providence to Sacred Heart, and then I was like gonna go home and just like figure out my life. Then they're like, okay, we want you to fly to Denver. So like leave your stuff here, fly to Denver. And I played like right after graduation, like which not all the rookies did. And then I was like flew back to Newark, like drove home, and then was like, okay, I guess my life's starting. But I hadn't really thought about what I was gonna do that much. But
And then was the first thing you did go coaching at Holy Cross? Was that the first?
I spent 1 year teaching middle school math.
Okay.
And then I was like, I think I want to coach. So I dabbled. My friend was coaching Holy Cross, so I went and coached with him for a year. And then I was like, I really want to be an educator. So I went back to grad school at BC, where I was coached the club team, which was an awesome experience, and was like got my master's in education. I wanted to be a teacher in like an urban public school. So that was like I decided that's the direction I'm going.
Yeah, was there like one aha moment, where you're like, I have to be in education, or like, was it any factors that really made that cemented that you're like this? Because you said you thought about it, but it never was the thing until it was.
Well, I had that 1 year teaching middle school, and then I coached college, and then I coached the club team, and so I was like, I just kind of, I wanted to be like I really liked coaching, and I wanted to be part of like a full picture of it as an educator, and I think it was more suited to like my strengths as a coach, like I think I'm not, I wouldn't be like a great like X's and O's or like scouting report person, but I was better at like kind of like relationship building and like connecting with kids. And that's the stuff that I wanted to work on more. So that kind of led me to like, if I'm going to coach, I want to coach younger kids. And got really interested in like urban education reform, kind of like trying to make the education system better in low income areas. So
how much of the inspiration came from your mom, or how helpful was she as a resource as you were kind of just starting to navigate things in terms of being able to pick her brain or be able to just draw from her experience and be like, okay, I know if I go this way, this is kind of what it looks like. So I'm going to kind of go this way, but I'm going to borrow some things or ask her about some things that I can maybe,
I think I definitely from an early age, like I wanted a career that I could like find meaning in. And I think I took that from her. Like I knew that she was like, this is important work. And I also kind of had like a blueprint, like, oh, I think I can make a life for myself if I'm a teacher. I saw what that looks like, And also I think I was like kind of risk averse. So that felt comfortable to me. Like, I know what this looks like, so I'm going to do it. Now I would have, like, part of me wishes I would have like explored some other things. I mean, it's worked out great, but she like provided a good blueprint in that sense. And definitely kind of in terms of like philosophical orientation, like have a job. And she would never push me in any direction for anything really, but just like, I saw her being like, I was like, I want that. I want to have a job that I'm like, feel passionately about.
Yeah. And we'll dive back into kind of that side of the journey, but going back to lacrosse. So was it the Barrage who drafted you in the MLL draft?
No, I my best friend from high school once described me as the Trent Dilfer of the MLL. He's like, you're pretty good, but not that great, but you won a championship. It was mostly because your team was pretty good. I was like, that's fair, And so it's like to answer your question, I was a journeyman. I was drafted by the Bayhawks, which was Gary Gate, player coach. So that was like it was a cool experience as like someone being my age, being like, wow, this guy Gary Gate's like my coach, and like, it's
and my teammate, and
yeah, exactly,
probably the GM of the team, and
right.
What do you want to do, Gary?
Yeah, and like you guys have probably, I'm sure, have met him and stuff, and he's like, I don't really know what I expected to be like that, but he's like really, he's super like laid back. He'd be at training camp, and be like, we're gonna like scrimmage a little bit today, and then he was just like so amazing as a player. So it was just a cool experience. Then the next year, I went back with the Bayhawks, and I was kind of battling like Trevor Tierney had me and Trevor and Rob Scher were the three goalies on the roster.
Right.
So it was kind of like somebody was going to be the odd man out there. And I think they thought it was going to be me, and Doc broke his thumb in like one of the early games of the season. So the Barrage needed a goalie. So they traded for me, or they picked me up or whatever. I think they traded for me. And then I played in his absence for a couple games that my second year. And then he came back.
We have video footage. I think your first game in there, you set your personal high save record, right?
It's possible. I played pretty well, as I recall. I know Ryan was there, I'm sure.
This is week 5. I believe it's at Keene.
God bless the internet.
Oh my goodness.
Get the volume down here, but look at this film quality footage. This is
extra high def.
This is the Barrage versus the New Jersey Pride. Looks like it's Kane University is where you guys are playing this. And it also looks like it was filmed from a like camcorder that you hold like.
It's pretty wild to think about how long ago this was, and like this is the way you can't even tell what's going on with this footage. It's good though. I'll be like I'll be playing. It makes it seem like I'm playing great. You can't really see either way.
Yeah. So
did that go in? Did he save it?
No. Whoa. Right now you're not even in cage. That's Rob Scher.
Yeah, so, no, that's the other team. I think that's
he's the New Jersey. Yeah, he's the New Jersey Pride goalie. Scher was.
Yeah, I think it was actually Scott Schroeder.
Oh, okay, sorry. Yep, no, you're right. Because Rob was still on the Bayhawks.
Yeah.
Is this all ringing a bell though? Is like, are you getting brought back to this?
I remember the game. I remember the game distinctly because I remember before the game, it was like my first game, so they're like handing me the stuff when you show up, and like. I don't know if I was wearing the dreaded number 57 in this game, but it's definitely possible. And it's like, so they're like giving me the stuff, and they hand me the shirt to wear under your, like your like warm up shirt pregame, whatever, like the t-shirt. And it's like all they have is like triple XL. And I'm like, all right, thanks.
Welcome to the league.
That was tough to get that 57 or 59. Coming your way as a journeyman, it's like it happens to you from time to time before they can order up a jersey.
Look at that gumball they threw you there.
Yeah, it's like I'm not taking myself too seriously. I know the situation here, but like this was just like the slice of humble pie was just maybe like a little bit too big. Like
yeah, come on.
Like we know what's here, but just just right there.
So I mean, it's a little hard to watch because it's so grainy, but this is the beginning, right? This is the beginning. But you made 21 saves in this game, so
I played well. The good thing about great thing about playing goalie in the MLL is like it's much more. There's so much more like rhythm to the game, and I felt like less pressure in a lot of ways because the games are a little high scoring. Like in the Ivy League. You'd like play games that were 6-4, and you'd be like, if I give up one bad goal, I probably just cost our team the season, Well, and in ML, you're like, oh, it was a bad one. I'll probably get another chance in 50 seconds to make a great save. And you can kind of get into a rhythm. It goes both ways because you can also get in a bad rhythm, and then it's like it's a dark place if you're like having a bad day as a goalie. but on the upside, I found it a little bit easier, and I kind of like got into a good rhythm. I think I wasn't feeling that much pressure because it was like kind of like what I was describing with Barrett, where like Doc was the obvious starter. I was there to like fill in. I'm gonna like help out, and that was a really fun game. It did a lot for my confidence, I think.
Did you talk to Sweeney about your recruiting trip and not going to Georgetown based off the terrible time that he showed you?
I did. We talked about it many times over the years, but it's funny because there was a guy who happened to be visiting his friend, the guy that I met on my recruiting visit at Brown. Happened to be visiting his buddy who went to Georgetown when I was on my trip to Georgetown. So like I'm there, and he's like, I remember you from like 2 weeks ago at Brown, and like we're hanging out partying, and he's like, he basically like I ended up hanging out with this guy from Brown like the whole time. So Sweeney did a great job as a host. I had a great time. I'm sure I had an amazing experience there. It's just, Brown was a good fit for me. Actually, Schroeder, the goalie in this game, was the goalie at Georgetown.
Oh, that's
And that was
right.
kind
Yeah.
of that was kind of part of it, because I was sort of like, I'll have to wait an extra year probably to play. So that did have I'd say like a little impact on my choice.
So you brought up, being able to shake off a goal or two because there are such high scoring games. Got to pull up this bad boy. I was watching the back half of this absolute
right off the
barn
bat,
burner of
an
a
international flavor for
26-26 tie game, highest scoring game in MLL history. You want to talk about shaking off a few goals?
It's,
This is the high, right? You remember this?
Yeah, I remember. I think
I wasn't sure if you repressed the memories.
my college coach used to like have this joke that he would use relatively, being like, if I like gave up a bunch of goals in practice or something, he'd be like, hey, do we need to get new nets? Like, are the nets worn out because they've been getting scored on so much? And that was like this game. But shockingly, there actually were some stops in this game, like defensive stops. But
Right there, you just
yeah,
stopped
there
right
you
there.
go. But it was an incredible. John Grant Jr. was unbelievable at this game. Like, it's one of the most impressive like individual performances I've ever seen. He basically like took the team on his back at the end of the game and was like, it was kind of impressive to just watch from the other end of the field.
When I didn't even remember, this was my rookie year, and I think I was flying to LA, and this was on ESPN. So I was watching this game on a flight or about to take off for a flight. And I remember being like, oh my gosh, I'm about to go play in this league, or like had just started playing in this league. But I couldn't remember who won. And so I watched it last night. I watched the last couple of minutes of it. My heart was racing. There's some insane – we're going to skip to the end here, but there's some insane plays at the end of this game. Like, Jack Reed throws like an over-the-head one-handed wrap on Mundorf that strips him with like 5 minutes into overtime. I'm like, what are you doing? How does that work?
Yeah, it was a great team. It was a really fun team to play on, and that's just the way the games go sometimes. I remember it's funny because it was Alex Smith. I went in his first game, the face-off guy, but he was definitely a rookie. So we were in Denver, and he went from college, a bunch of face-offs or something. There were like 60 face-offs in this game. I remember he was like, after the game, he was just like, what is this? Like, I'm not ready for this, And he was battling against Jeff Snyder. It's like, it was just like really tough face-off 60 times in the altitude. It was like, but he did a great job, and it was a great game.
The Levs just standing on his head here, and then not
having. Got all the saves out of the way early.
But ready? Let's get the audio here, because they got the helmet. You went from a hand cam to now your helmet cam.
Whoa!
Anticipation rebound.
Great save on the rebound.
Levs.
I love it.
His foot was definitely increased there.
Wow, zero gravity from Mundorf.
When I saw your guys' episode with Brody, it made me pretty nostalgic thinking back about some of these early, like, I guess it wasn't the early days. It was pretty early MLL days, but it was like, just looking at like Mundorf, like that, he was just an awesome player. Like, I love the way that he played lacrosse.
Do you remember strapping on the old helmet cam for this game?
No, I don't. I did not. I forgot that I had the helmet cam. But I was like, it's good to hear Quint's voice. Like, Quint, like, was not I don't think, like, a fan of mine. And I remember I got a text, not that he wasn't a fan of mine, but, like, I remember getting a text from a buddy of mine one time, and he's like, I'm watching this other lacrosse game you're not playing in. And Quint is like, yeah, like, Rochester's got some real question marks in the goal. Like, he's really going after you. Like, what's up with this guy? So I'm glad to hear him say that, I made a good save.
Yeah, I'm going to fast forward here to the very end of this because, like I said, I was, like, watching this, like, sweating. Junior scored, like, with, like, let me get back to before it starts overtime. But there was not much time left when Junior scored to tie it up. With the 2.
I think he had late in the game or in overtime, like, essentially what equates to, like, a step back 3-pointer where he, like, was inside the 2-point line, stepped backwards, but then was able to score, which is like his momentum's going the wrong way. It's like not something you see every day.
Yeah, so you guys are up. No, you guys are down 1, but Denver's
down 1.
Score here. They call a timeout. Oh, you don't have to call a timeout there, guys. Go to the hopper.
Yeah. Make the video smaller. Sometimes it streams a little bit better.
I don't know if that's in my pay grade.
Just some
Here.
backseat driving.
What a claim to fame to have played goalie in the highest scoring of all time.
But they didn't pull you. You played all 4 quarters.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I wouldn't even say it was like my worst game. Like, I like sometimes the nature of the game is like if you were to evaluate your performance, like how many bad goals did you give up or something. Like, I think I've had worse games. You know, like it was a game where there were a lot of good scoring opportunities generated, and like I don't know. I mean, it wasn't my best game, but yeah, we got it done.
That's a great head cam shot there. That helmet cam is better than the entire 2005 games recording. All right, so you're
down 2
seconds here.
This might be the 2-pointer.
It's gotta be because Westy's got to be thinking. Looks like Westerville just scored to put them up 2, so he's got to be like, well, that's the game. Yeah. I just iced that.
Who's 70?
The thing that's great about this team is like with Alex Smith facing off and Brody and Chris Schiller on the wings, it was like we basically were like we had such a possession a possession advantage. Then our offense was like you were basically never out of it.
Your offense was silly for that stretch. I mean, like 77's Colin Doyle. He's running out of the box for God's sake. Like that's just like borderline not fair.
So Lee Zink double. Who was 77? Was that like a D midi? Because he was off the face off.
No, it was Colin Doyle.
Oh, that's right. It was Doyle. So he tried to double.
So, yeah, just say
big mistake.
Yeah, not a D midi. Definitely not a D midi.
No. And not someone you're going to knock the ball out of his stick either. So why try?
I remember.
Gotta wonder who was 7 on Rochester that wouldn't give it up for Colin Doyle. Like who's rocking 7?
Yeah,
Pat Dutton.
Oh yeah.
Cornell guy.
Who was it?
Yeah, sounds about right.
Dutton.
Sounds about right, Levs, doesn't it?
Yeah. Typical Cornell guy.
I know.
See if I can get this last play.
Doyle was an amazing player. So Brody was on the team, and I think Brody was like friends with him and knew him from indoor and stuff. And like, but Colin Doyle did not have like extensive experience playing outdoor lacrosse.
Right.
And the first game he played, I think we were actually playing against you guys, the Barrage. Like, Brody was like, we got to pick this guy up. So we picked him up, and he had obviously had a great career with the Rock, but I don't think he was like on the radar of like a lot of other MLL teams. It's like, this is somebody who's got to be picked up. And we're like warming up for the game. He's an awesome guy, amazing teammate, super fun guy to hang out with. And we're getting ready for the game, and he's like, so like, what are the rules? I'm like, this is amazing. Like, this guy's about to play a pro lacrosse game. He's like, so yeah, what are the rules? And he was like, I'm pretty sure he had like 4 assists or something. Yeah.
Shoot and score, baby. Shoot and score. Well, so yeah, so you went from there, and then this Rattlers team, you guys ended up winning the next year in 2008. So, but did you? So watching the highlights, I think I remember this. You and Queener split halves, right? You would play the first half, and then he would play the second half.
Yeah. So I went into the year as like the incumbent starter, and I played pretty well in the beginning, and then he came on as a rookie, and then I had a couple like shaky games, and they played him, and we kind of like stumbled into this like routine. But I think probably for like the second half of the season, at least, that was like the set routine. I played the first half, he played the second half, and we took that the whole way through, won the championship that way.
And you kind of like it's such a head scratcher, but at the same time, like you're such different styles. And I remember like it's probably a talking point that he provides that second half spark of coming out of the cage when like maybe you need fresh legs, or you need a spark out of the back end, which I always thought was interesting. And obviously it worked, right? It worked for you guys.
Yeah. I mean, I think it was like very well suited for him. Like it put him in a position to do what he could do really well for our team. And I mean, I think he's a great goalie. Like I think he's a little underrated as a stopper in general. But I just think he was a great goalie. And it was tough for me because I kind of had like yielded what had been my spot through some like shaky play. But I was like getting a little older, so I was trying to be mature about it, and just be like, hey, like this is what the team needs me to do, and I really really liked the team a lot. Like personally, it was like a really close group of guys. So, and it was like obviously a great opportunity to win a championship. So it was an awesome experience. Like I didn't play as well as I would have wanted to that year. But I felt like I could make good contributions to the team, and like we figured out a way to make it work. So looking back on it, it was like just an awesome experience. It was a bad goal though.
This game is a bloodbath.
Yeah.
I mean, this
yeah,
game
this
is
is where our offense just went crazy. I remember feeling for Schwartzman at the other end. I'm like, this guy's gonna lose it.
Well, this is the one that
game.
Sweeney and I, or Sweeney was talking about, where he was like, "Oh, whoever wins this game has to play." Right? You guys, because we lost to Denver and you guys lost to Rochester. That's right.
Yeah, we lost to Rochester in the semis.
Yeah, that was an incredible game. Like we had been battling all year really, and like it was like basically a coin toss. I think it came down to like a very small number of plays, and I think Casey Powell scored the game-winning goal on like.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
The window was like this big. It was like it was a great shot.
Yeah. So was this your first one of your first major championships that you won in lacrosse?
Yeah, I was going to say intramural football at Brown 2002 was the first championship. But yeah, no, I won a sectional championship in lacrosse in high school, but I never. That was it. And
this play by Brett.
Then I won the Bayhawks a couple years later.
This play by Queener was pretty absurd. I remember this one where he throws the between the legs back. I remember what? Why would you do that?
Yeah, there was a lot of that, but it's like it was awesome. Like he did a lot for the team. Schiller, we had so many great teammates. Schiller was just an awesome.
Was Schiller the captain?
Yeah. Awesome captain, awesome teammate.
He's like the perfect captain, right? It's just like I'll follow that guy. Like, what do you want me to do? He's just such a stand-up person.
Yeah, and he didn't need to say much. I remember one time they were doing the helmet cam. They're doing like the audio, and he's like, they decided to mic me up, and he's like, they mic'd up the wrong guy. He's like, I didn't say one word the whole game. But like that's the kind of person he is. He would lead. He was the leader of the team, but he didn't have to like tell people what to do. It was just like everybody knew like he's going to set the standard for like professionalism. He was one of the first guys who I met who was like like what it means to be a pro lacrosse player. And that had a big influence on our team, I think.
And he's another Rochester guy, right? Grew up in Rochester.
Yeah, that was the cool thing about that team. We had, I'd say, like more than 50% of the team. It was basically everyone was from between Syracuse and Toronto. It was kind of like like Joe Walters. I played against when I was 8 years old. Like I've known him for a long time. We grew up near each other, and like Dutton is from Rochester, Schiller's from Rochester. Joe Smith was from Buffalo. Saul Bliss was from like Tully. Reggie was from Syracuse. Just like Casey was from Carthage. It was just like we were an upstate Canadian group.
That is like a true blue. That's like I'm surprised you guys didn't have Carhartt team.
We need that spot. I don't know who's in charge of sponsorships, but let's get on it.
and then so when did you make the move over to? So you won in 2008, and then you won again in 2010 with Chesapeake. When did you go from?
So after we won, the team went out of business. Right away. And so then I was living in Boston at the time, and Boston picked me up. And so I played. That was when we all played together that one year in Boston. And then the next year I was kind of like, I'm thinking about not playing. And my now wife was going to business school in UVA, and I was like, I think I might want to play. And I called BD, and I was like, my role on that team, on the Cannons team, I played a fair amount, and then Kip kind of like was the starter, and I was basically like a reliable backup. The Trent Dilfer thing, I think, is kind of right on. But so it was kind of like BD, like, can you trade me? It'll be a little bit more convenient for me, and like you can probably fill this role. Maybe you can get something for me. And so that's how I ended up in Chesapeake, and that was my last year.
So you win on top, you go out, you sort of like, I can't get any better than this, and ride off the sunset?
It's funny because my the last year, it's like I remember one of the coaches for the Bayhawks always like wanted to do like really extensive warm-ups. And I played well in training camp and was like the goalie was Chris Garrity. He had an amazing year. And so I lost out to him, which was like the right decision by the coaching staff. Obviously, we won the tournament. We won the championship, and he played great all year. So I like had the role of the backup.
Also another great dude.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I had I knew my role in the team, but I also knew that I was kind of coming to an end, and like the guy would be like, "Let's get a warm up," and I'd be like, he'd get like 3 shots. I'm like, I'm good. You know, it's like I've been playing lacrosse for 25 years. If I'm going the game, it's not going to be for like an hour from now, and like I'll do some stretches on the sideline or something. It's like I've been hit with the ball enough. I don't need any more. And we had Phipps was a rookie, so he came on like halfway through, and in practice, he's like, mind if I get some reps? I'd be like, yeah, totally, go for it. It's like playing goalie is like it doesn't age well. It's like you kind of are like, I don't ever really look forward to playing casually, because it's like I don't like being worse than I remembered myself being. You know, it's like kind of mentally not a good place to be in. It's not like, oh, I go play and I threw it out of bounds. It's like, oh, that guy scored on me.
And you're getting a ball shot. So
yeah, and you get hit with the ball. You're just like, you know, I might play like in Lake Placid or something like every once in a while, but
I think 2010 Levs was the year. Your warm up version was my one-on-one version, where we used to do this drill where we do one-on-one into a 3-on-3, and be like, I've had plenty of one-on-ones. I'm good. Just somebody else could do the one-on-one, and then I'll just hop in for the 3-on-3. Is everybody okay? Is everybody okay with that? Like, if everybody's okay with that, that would be super.
Well, that was the great thing about Sweeney. Sweeney would always be like, I remember all these like travel experiences in the MLL where you're like, oh, we're running late. Can we get the practice in? And Sweeney would be like, I really don't think we need to practice here. He's always pushing for no practice. It was great.
Sweeney's the ultimate no practice guy. Oh.
I mean, to his credit, the guy was ready to go on game day. It's like he didn't need to practice.
So you ride off in the sunset with the championship banner, and you had started Metro Lacrosse in Boston prior to this, correct?
Yeah, so after I had my grad school and I was playing this whole time, I signed up to volunteer at Metro Lacrosse in 2007, and then they called me like, hey, we have this job. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. Because I started working there in November of 2007. It was already going. I didn't found it or anything. And then I was there, and I eventually was working on the program staff, working with kids. And then I eventually became the executive director in like 2011. And that was, I just kind of got interested in like nonprofit management as a career after working there. So I did some like professional education on it and just kind of like started to pursue that. Got a really good experience taking over as the executive director, I think a little bit before I was kind of like qualified to have that job. So it was really good like training on the job. And I loved the job and was really challenged by it and thought we were doing good work, important work. And then my wife, we weren't married at the time, had moved to LA. So I was interested in moving to LA, and I got a phone call or an email one day from a guy named Doc O'Connor, who was I didn't know who he was. He just was like, hey, I heard about Metro Lacrosse. I'm kind of interested in doing something like that in LA. Can I pick your brain? I was like, sure, happy to tell you what I know. As it turns out, he was a partner at CAA, the talent agency, and just like he was really well positioned to help start something. And I was so interested in moving to LA for personal, like to start my life, So we met a couple times, and I put together a proposal, and I was like, hey, would you make a gift to support this? I think we can get something off the ground here. And he did. And then we raised some more money. And so I was walking around Watts, not literally knocking on doors of schools being like, hey, I want to do this. It was like, I just had me and Doc and his support. And it was like, okay, start something. So I was out there trying to make it happen. And we started this organization in 2014, City Lacrosse, which was great. We were making great progress. And I had known the guys from Harlem for a long time. And the board chair, founder, Simon Cataldo, called me in like late 2016. He was like, hey, are you interested in this job? I was like, not really, we're about to have a baby and I'm happy. And then they were in the midst of national expansion. I was like, well, you guys could maybe become Harlem Lacrosse LA, and you could have the job from out there. And so that's what happened. So January 1st of 2017 is when I officially started as Harlem Lacrosse. But it was kind of like all part of this journey of the same thing. As it turns out, a couple of years later, we ended up merging with Metro Lacrosse. So now they're under the same umbrella.
Well, and the irony there is, I remember we were talking years before, because Metro had tried like a similar,
Yeah.
I don't want to call it roll up because it's not a roll up, like a similar, because we were doing some nonprofit work in terms of trying to grow the sport in the inner city of Baltimore. And we had done some things there. And then Metro kind of was like, hey, we think that there's something here. Like, and we were like, that sounds great. Like, we would love to be a part of something kind of bigger within the sport, as opposed to this little small thing that, you know, this very niche thing that we're doing. If we can be a part of something bigger, like we're all for it. I remember having lots of conversations with you as that was going on. And then lo and behold, you know, fast forward kind of 4 years later, and boom, kind of Harlem's able to pull it off.
Yeah, it's interesting. It was like
Remember those
a lot of the same conversations, like same ideas. You know, it was kind of
Yeah.
like, are there economies of scale? Can we centralize some things to really? Can we approach donors that maybe would be interested in something larger, but we couldn't have access to as a really small grassroots thing? Same thinking. You know, it's just sometimes in life it's a function of timing. It's just like it didn't come together a couple of years earlier, and yeah, we've had some good success at that. We've scaled up a bit. I mean, when I started at Harlem, we had, I think, 14 or 15 employees operating about $1.5 million budget. Now we're serving about 300 to 400 kids. Now we're about a $5 million budget, 46 employees serving like 1,300 kids, 1,300. So it's been over those last 4 years, it's been like, I think we've achieved some of what we were talking about back then. It's kind of like, can it be kind of like a 1 + 1 = 3, where if we all kind of band together, we can achieve some bigger things. So,
well, it's got to be exciting for you. It's kind of like these flags that whether you planted the flag or whether you helped raise the flag in Boston and then in LA, and now they're all under the same banner. I mean, it's got to be a reward. You're like the Johnny Appleseed of lacrosse, and it's pretty cool. And it kind of found you, which is so it wasn't like you set out to do this. It like each role kind of like enticed you or pulled you in.
Yeah, totally. I was like, hey, I want to volunteer. This is interesting to me. And like, you know, now I didn't even really think of like a career as a nonprofit professional. Like, but now, like, you know, I would say that's my career more so than like it's a lacrosse thing. It's like I'm a nonprofit executive director, which is a career that exists that I didn't know about when I went to Brown, you know. But yeah, I've learned a lot. It's good. It does offer me a lot of the things that I was interested in when I was thinking about teaching. You know, now I'm student facing a lot less. Like at City Lacrosse, it was grassroots. I would see kids all the time. But so now I've spent a lot of time on other stuff. But so I miss that. But it's definitely find a lot of meaning in the work, and I'm challenged by it. It's different every day, and I'm sure there's a lot of similarities trying to run Trilogy too. It's
sorry, I was just saying. The overlap has been cool, where, you know, we've had Harlem lacrosse players for years come up to our Millbrook camp, and now some of those kids that were campers as middle schoolers are working events for us as staff members, coaches, and like, you know, like DJ Peterson, who came to camp way back in the day. Then he was on our ICE program, which is like our high level program. Now he's playing football and lacrosse at Bryant, working our tournament that we run there. Like, it's just so awesome to start to see it come kind of full circle, and you see these guys that you remember as middle school kids who were coming out of the city for the first time, and now they're like helping run events and giving back, and your voices have changed. You know, it's very cool.
Yeah, we have 2 former Metro Lacrosse participants that are full-time staff members at Harlem Lacrosse, one of whom I coach. Awesome. And we have 1 former Harlem Lacrosse participant who actually came to a camp that we ran at Metro many years ago. So I knew him as a 8th grader probably. He's a program director for us in Boston, and we just added a former Harlem Lacrosse student to our board. So it's kind of crazy to think that it's 13 years ago that I started doing the work, and you're like, yeah, that's enough time for someone to like grow into like an adult, you know. But I definitely wanted that from the beginning. I was like, hey, like, I think there's injustice in the world, and I want to be committed to this work, and I want I want to try to be in this for the long haul. I don't know exactly what that's going to look like or how to make it happen, but I really want to stick by this or try to. And so I'm proud that I'm still at it. You know, it's funny. I'm running into coworkers. I've had a lot of great people I've worked with over the years, and then it's like, yeah, I'm still doing it. You know?
Yeah.
Like you knew me 10 years ago. I was out there, like, you know, still at it. But I think it's the right thing for me.
Yeah, we can certainly empathize along those lines. And I think what's cool about just kind of this, you know, and I'll just speak on personal level, like being in some of those meetings with you kind of early on, being one of your teammates and being able to develop that relationship, like, and maybe both of us were doing stuff that we were maybe a little too young or unqualified for, as you kind of said, but we're able to kind of grow into positions. And, you know, because of that relationship and the depth of that relationship, it's like, you know, therefore when we're able to like talk and do stuff, some of the things that like Mitch has been so instrumental in kind of spearheading, it's like, you know, we know who you are. You've been doing it for so long. And I think that speaks volumes to who you are in terms of just character. But then also that just kind of also just gives some reassurance. Like we know things are gonna be done the right way, and we know the organization's doing the right things, you know?
I appreciate that very much and feel the same way. It's like, it's cool to do one thing that's cool about working at Harlem Lacrosse is like the community in general is like there's tons of outreach. People and it's happened I think in an acute way recently where people are saying,
Sure.
hey, we recognize where there's racial inequity and we see Harlem Lacrosse as being on the front lines of that, and so we want to help in some way. And as someone who like spent a lot of time like going to kids' phys ed classes and being like, here's a lacrosse stick, and having them be like, what is that? You know,
Yep.
and then like ushering them through their lacrosse journey, there comes a point where like they're not like they've kind of grown beyond what we were able to provide or what I was able to provide at that time. So you're looking for partners, and it's like to have people that like, you know, you're just like, I know you're in good hands with Trilogy, and these are people I really trust and have known a long time ago for a long time, and like I believe in their abilities as professionals. I believe in their character as people, and like they're just really talented coaches that it's just like you have a very personal relationship with the kids.
Yeah.
You know, we all do, but like you kind of like you want to handle it with care. Like I want to get it's like not like your own kids, but like, hey, I want to make sure that if I'm directing you somewhere in the world of lacrosse, it's like to people that I know you're in good hands. So it's been an awesome thing with the partnership.
Well, and I mean, I think that brings to light something that we talk about a lot. I'm sure you probably feel like this too. It's like, it's Harlem Lacrosse, it's Trilogy Lacrosse, but really it's like so much less to do with lacrosse, right? It's like,
Yeah.
and you guys even more so than what we do, but it's like we use lacrosse as this tool or this vehicle that links people, but ultimately it's like teaching them to be a better person, teaching them about how if you work really hard, things will pay off. How if you practice, you get better at things. Like those are the skills that we're trying to teach, not necessarily like throwing a behind the back pass or dodging, you know, dodging north-south, because God knows I can't teach those.
Yeah, it's I think it's you guys are so I enjoy my role in the lacrosse world because when I see like the world of college recruiting and stuff, it's like there's so many great experiences for kids, and I had such an awesome experience playing in college, so I want that for other people. But sometimes it does seem that like everyone's like so focused on that outcome that they're sort of like missing everything along the way. And so, you know, at Harlem we're a little bit different. Like we're pretty explicit, like that's what we're all about, you know. But I just I want people to get that experience to be like not be like, okay, I got to get here and sort of miss out on like what they could learn along the way, or just like the great experiences they could have along the way. You know, just like great teammates and learning really important stuff, like stuff that helps me as a professional that had nothing to do with playing lacrosse, but I did learn from coaches and teammates as a kid. And so, yeah, on the same page.
Yeah, one question I had that I've been thinking about more recently, obviously with everything that's going on and so much of it being about racial inequality and you know, Harlem Lacrosse largely serving communities of color. How has that shaped what you guys have done, the discussions you've had, how have you negotiated that? And you know, as a white male, right, too, it's another added challenge, I imagine.
Yeah, it's been a really really intense period. for me personally, but I think for Harlem Lacrosse in general. Like we were already in COVID, and we were really focused on like educational inequities related to school closure. Like how can we support our
Yeah.
kids? If you're someone who has fewer resources, the ways that the school closures and disrupting your education is like disproportionate, you know? And so we were trying to support our kids in that way. And there are of course issues of race overlaying that, you know, like the kids who have fewer resources and the kids that we serve are almost exclusively minority students. So and then with the murder of George Floyd, it just sort of, and we were already doing a lot of work around diversity, equity, and inclusion as an organization. We were about to, we'd secured a firm to do a DEI audit. We were doing like a professional development series with our staff called Building Anti-Racist White Educators. We have like a bunch of other professional development initiatives. We're working on stuff to make ourselves, to really like, there are a lot of aspects of DEI work that are important for Harlem Lacrosse, who has like really white leadership structures serving minority students. When George Floyd was murdered and the sort of like heightened awareness of racial inequity of the country, I'd say one of the things that came up was like just the pain that a lot of our kids and families were feeling at that time. And so we're asking ourselves, like, what do we need to do to support our kids and families right now? And also like engaging our Black staff members and sort of like trying to like involve them in our response. You know, like they had a really important perspective to share, and like we didn't want to overburden those people to say like, hey, you have to figure this out to figure out how to make Harlem Lacrosse more anti-racist. But they had really important voices to share, including and perspectives to offer, including like Josiah, who's an alum, who's like, I experienced this as a student. He was an Africana Studies major at Hobart. Now he's a program director for Harlem Lacrosse. So he's like, he has a lot to say, you know, that can help us be better and help us support our kids more. So, and then there's also sort of like the public discourse, you know, how are people talking about race and racism? And so we've been like trying to figure out the right way to engage there. And we've added some people of color to our board. So I was really happy that it kind of like pushed us into action there. So it's been a lot in a pretty short period of time, but I'm proud to sort of like be in some ways on the front lines and you know, be advocating for our kids and families the best that we possibly can. And it's important conversations that are hard, you know, that are going on right now. But I think I maybe fundamentally am an optimist, and I do see some great signs, you know, just of the lacrosse community, I think, moving forward and getting to a better place, and Harlem Lacrosse hopefully playing a key role there. So that was a lot.
Yeah, no, it was well said.
No, it's good.
You know, I think it's got to be a challenge, and it sounds like the thing that you brought up is like you guys were doing this already. Like a lot of the stuff about anti-racism is such a big word now that people talk about, but it's like, yeah, we were that was an initiative for us before some of these horrible things happened, and that was something that you guys have been working towards for like you said, 13 years, not just since George Floyd was murdered, not just since some of these things happened, right? It just amplifies the need for action, like you said.
Yeah, I mean, we, like everyone, we can get better, and we need to get better as an organization. You know, it's hard to reconcile. Like, I'm both proud of the work that I've done to like combat racial inequality in the world of lacrosse, and also recognize that like we should be better. You know, we should have more people of color in the leadership of our organization. You know, we should be more thoughtful about the experience of our kids as we are guiding kids to predominantly white institutions all the time. You know, kids that are going off to boarding school and to colleges, and we should be preparing them the best that we possibly can. And we should be preparing those institutions the best that we can. We play kind of a unique role to say like, hey, this is the experience of this child. It's not like every other kid at your school. And you should be thinking about that when you're structuring their remote learning, or when you're like designing activities for the kids on spring break and stuff, or like, you know, there's a million things that come up where I think we can all be better. And like I said, I hope Harlem can play a role in just pushing the ball forward.
Well, and we'll leave you with one final question. What do you think you're the most proud of Harlem Lacrosse thus far? Obviously, continue to have goals that you want to achieve, but what are you most proud of so far?
I mean, it's a really special experience to get feedback from like parents. We got an email from a parent who had 2 students go through the program right after George Floyd was murdered, or it was maybe a week later. It was after we sent out a statement about our response, and it was I've been moved to tears many times at work in the past like 2 months, more so than I ever thought I would, but um, it's like I really cherish the experience of someone going to you and saying like, thank you for creating these opportunities for my kids, and it's like I get to be in that position because I work here, but I recognize that that's the reflection of a lot of other people's efforts. That's donors making gifts, that's volunteers, that's other staff members, that's partners like Trilogy, and like I get to be in the person who like opens the info@Harlem Lacrosse email account and see this parent from email from a parent. But like sometimes I'm like, oh man, I wish everyone who was a part of this could feel that. So I think just the individual experiences are the things that in which you take the most pride. It's like these are big problems, systemic issues, and as it's going to be hard for us to solve them individually for any one entity, but to know that like, hey, we can make a difference for a kid, and that's progress, I think is it's definitely a good reason to get up and come to work every day.
Well, your former teammate Chaz Woodson was on with Mitch, seeming like the days and weeks it's like kind of hard to
right.
It's the shortest, longest, like, and his words were just really impactful, at least to me on a personal level, and was able to really kind of put his finger on kind of a lot of things that I had swirling, and it was, and some of the things you just said are kind of spot on as well. It's like, I think what Chaz said was so powerful for me was just like, do what you can do in your lot in life. Like if you're not a politician, you're not going to like, change bills, but like, what can you do given what's kind of in your scope or in your purview? And to your point, like, things aren't binary. Like, yes, like, do we think that we've hopefully helped? Yes, but that's also doesn't say that we have a lot more to do. Like, it's both, like, or it can be both rather. And like, if it wasn't, then like, start now. If you have been, then keep going and do more. And so certainly, as one of your guys' partners, we're certainly proud of that, but also, like you, recognize that so much more needs to be done, and want to continue to support and continue what we do to try to, make the world a better place in the simplest of terms, and while recognizing that isn't the case and hasn't been the case for quite some time.
Yeah, well said. It's I know you got to run, Mitch. I want to share one story about Chaz. I was on a panel with him recently, and like, Chaz was a friend of mine in college, I would say, and to this day, and I've known his family and stuff. But when I met Chaz, I didn't know a lot of Black people. Like that, I was 19 years old, and like I've spent some time reflecting on like what I was as his teammate. And he said when we had this conversation that I was a good teammate and a good captain, and I think I was. But when I look back on it, I'm like, Chaz did not spend a lot of time with the lacrosse team at Brown. He spent a lot of time with the Black community at Brown. And there wasn't one time where I ever was like tried to extend myself to say, hey, what's going on? And I never thought about all the things that we were experiencing where he was like the only Black person experiencing it, and yet I was his teammate. And like, I think I was a good teammate, but it just made me think like, how could I be better in the world of lacrosse? And that's it was a great, like, having the conversation with him now was like, it was really helpful to help me kind of like recognize that. And I think a lot of people are going through that sort of like self-reflection of like, I recognize that like they're on that are unacceptable to me. These are not like consistent with the values that I want to hold. But like, I've been living my life and sort of like allowing it to happen. Like, what should I do? And so it was great to have that conversation with Chaz, and he's really just a really thoughtful person. So it's just like he's a great person to talk to about this stuff.
Well, I got to carve out time. We always got to end with the quick hit questions, so I can't not include those. So,
all right,
best place to play lacrosse?
Ooh, best place to play lacrosse. The best place to play lacrosse for me, I would say, was like Lake Placid. But I think we had camp in LA at this boarding school, Thatcher, which is like it's the most picturesque lacrosse field I've ever seen in my life. Go to their website and check it out. Like I've only coached there, not played there, but I saw it for the first time with these like evening games. The sun's going down. I'm like, if I could play lacrosse again, this is where I want to play.
Is that like north? It's like North LA, like up kind of.
Yeah, it's in Ojai.
Santa Barbara. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. That is a cool area. All right. Best teammate you've ever had?
We were talking about Schiller earlier. He's definitely up there. I think Brody's up there as well. I would say those two guys really stuck out to me.
Looks like we got to get Shills on the podcast.
Yeah, pull him up.
Now that you're retired, you can admit this, but the one shooter that you're like, oh dear God, like I got to go against that guy. Like I just, for whatever reason, maybe he's not the best shooter or this shit, but I just cannot. He has my number. I cannot save this guy's shot.
It's funny. I'd say Kyle Dixon was somebody I always struggle with. And I think with him, it was like like I wasn't the only one with that, but he just like, he could get so much velocity without a big windup. So it was always like on you quicker than you expected. Whereas like someone like Mike Springer or something, who had a hard shot, but he would kind of like, it would take a minute for him to wind up. So you kind of could prepare for it. Whereas like Dixon would just get it off. And every single time I was like surprised at how fast it was coming at me.
Best garbage plate in Rochester?
I'm like old school. Like Nick Tahoe's is like, I think you want to go there. I don't even know if they're still open, but like when I was growing up, it was like a pretty dangerous place. There was like frequently like violent crimes happening there late at night. And it's like, I feel like if you're getting a garbage plate, you want that whole experience, It's in part about the food, in part about like, this is like a kind of like a shady operation. But now it's like, it's too corporate now. Like every restaurant has a garbage plate. It's like, I think I go old school original Nick Tahoe's.
Like a little risk involved.
Exactly.
You gotta eat it as fast as possible.
Exactly.
Oh, that's too good.
All right. Best memory in lacrosse that you can pinpoint.
Oh man, it's like we're talking about playing, and it's like for so much of my life, I thought of my whole lacrosse career as like a player, And I remember when I stopped playing, being like, what? And now it's like I've had like a long career in lacrosse, not as a player. So I think my best memories are actually like working at Harlem Lacrosse or Metro Lacrosse, like just like some coaching experiences that I had where like just kind of like a ragtag group of kids. I remember this one game, it was like we were like a total Bad News Bears group, and it all came together and we won this game that we shouldn't have won. And it just like, it was very fulfilling to me, and it just really stands out among all the experience I had in lacrosse, just because it was like, I think somebody once said to me, I think success as a coach is a little more gratifying than success as a player, because you recognize just like it requires a lot of different pieces coming together. And so I'd say that's probably like my best memories. That one game of this group of kids from Metro Lacrosse was probably like 2008 or 2009.
Spoken like a true executive director right there.
Yeah,
that's an awesome way to end it. But can't say thanks enough for taking time out to talk to us and about some difficult topics, but also a lot of fun stuff and looking back at the old MLL handycam footage. So
yeah, it was great. It was a lot of fun, and just appreciate you guys doing these and all the work that you're doing and the partnership, and look forward to doing more with it in the future.
And congrats on the new PLL partnership. It's going to be featured kind of coming up soon. Looking forward to learning more about that as those games kind of start popping up too.
Yeah, really excited about that. They're doing great stuff in the sport, and I think have shown a real leadership in terms of like a lot of issues of social justice. So I'm excited to partner with them in that.
And kind of last thing, give you the floor here. People who want to get involved, want to help Harlem Lacrosse, want to find out more about what you're doing, what should they do?
Yeah, definitely go to the website, and if you fill out the volunteer form, if you want to make a gift and support our work, we're in 5 different cities: Boston, New York, Philly, Baltimore, and LA. So if there's something near you, in the world of COVID, we've started engaging a lot of volunteers from all over the world. So if you're like, hey, I want to do something, we got virtual field trips happening with kids. We got remote tutoring happening with kids, and the financial support is meaningful. You know, people are saying that helps us deliver our program in the way that we want it. And we're trying really hard to build high school programs for every kid in our who has Harlem Lacrosse in middle school, and it's going to require growth on our part. And we can, but I think if we do, we're going to see some really exciting like long-term outcomes, and we're going to need everybody's help to do it.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Levs. We appreciate it. We'll end on a Levs, and
Thanks, Mike.
Good stuff. Yeah. Thanks, guys. Great work. Keep it up. Talk to you guys soon.
Take care.